Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he watched the asteroid slowly rotate on the main screen. The rock was nothing special, just another chunk of iron and nickel floating near Jupiter's orbit, but it would pay the bills for another month, and that was enough. "How's the new drive looking, Lisa?" Jake called to the engineer hunched over a control panel. Lisa Park looked up from her work, oil stains on her jumpsuit and a satisfied smile on her face. "The quantum field generator is running smooth as butter, Captain. We should be able to jump straight to Mars Station instead of taking the long route through the belt." The mining ship Frontier's Edge was not much to look at. 200 meters of patched hull plates, recycled air systems, and mining equipment that had seen better decades. Jake's crew of 12 had been working the outer system for 5 years, pulling precious metals from rocks that nobody else wanted to bother with. "All right, people, let's pack it up," Jake announced over the ship's intercom. "We've got enough ore to make this trip worthwhile. Tom, secure the mining arms. Rick, plot us a course home." Tom Bradley, their chief mechanic, was already climbing out of the cargo bay where he had been loading the last containers of processed ore. "Mining arms are locked down and secured, boss. She's ready to fly." Rick Stone sat at the pilot station, his fingers dancing over the navigation controls. "Course laid in, Captain. The new drive should cut our travel time in half." Jake nodded and settled into his command chair. It was not really a bridge, just the front section of the ship with a few extra screens and the captain's seat that Lisa had welded together from spare parts. "Take us home, Rick." The pilot's hands moved across the control board with practiced ease. The quantum field generator hummed to life, filling the ship with a low vibration that everyone had learned to ignore. Outside the viewports, space began to shimmer and bend as the experimental faster-than-light drive prepared to tear a hole in reality. "Field at 80%, Lisa called out, monitoring her instruments. 90%, ready for jump." "Execute," Jake ordered. The universe twisted inside out. Instead of the familiar blue-white tunnel of hyperspace that should have carried them toward Mars, the ship plunged through a swirling vortex of colors that had no names. Alarms screamed as the navigation system tried to make sense of readings that should not exist. The artificial gravity flickered, making Jake's stomach lurch. "What the hell is happening?" Tom shouted from his station. "I don't know." Lisa's voice was tight with concentration as she fought to keep the drive from tearing itself apart. "The quantum field is fluctuating wildly. Something's wrong with the matrix calculations." The ship bucked and twisted like a wild animal. Jake gripped his chair as loose tools and equipment crashed around the cabin. "Rick, can you get us out of this?" "Trying." The pilot's knuckles were white as he worked the controls. "The navigation computer is showing impossible readings. We're not in normal space anymore." The chaos lasted for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, everything went quiet. The alarms stopped screaming. The light steadied. The artificial gravity settled back to normal. Jake took a deep breath and looked around at his crew. Everyone was still in one piece, though they all looked like they had been through a blender. "Status report. What's our situation?" Lisa was already bent over her diagnostic panel. "Drive core is stable but completely drained. Whatever we just went through took everything we had. We're running on backup power." "Navigation shows we're in an unknown system," Rick reported, his voice carefully calm. "I'm reading 11 planets, 2 suns, and—" He paused, staring at his screen. "Captain, you need to see this." Jake moved to look over Rick's shoulder at the sensor display. What he saw made his blood run cold. The screen was filled with contacts, hundreds of them, all moving in formation. Ships, warships, from the look of their energy signatures. "How big are those things?" Tom asked, peering at the display. Rick checked his readings twice before answering. "The smaller ones are about 800 meters long. The big ones are pushing 2 kilometers. Before anyone could respond, the communication system crackled to life. A harsh voice filled the bridge, speaking in a language none of them had ever heard. The universal translator that handled communication between Earth's various colonies was silent. "They're trying to talk to us," Jake said unnecessarily. "Rick, can you get the main screen working?" The pilot flipped several switches, and the forward viewport was replaced by a communication screen. The image that appeared made everyone on the bridge take a step back. The being on the screen looked almost human, but wrong in subtle ways. Its skin was pale blue-gray, and its eyes were too large and completely black. It wore what was obviously a military uniform, all gold braid and sharp angles. When it spoke, its voice was cold and commanding. The universal translator finally engaged, turning the alien words into heavily accented English. Unknown vessel, you have violated Imperial space during a military operation. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction. Jake blinked. Then he looked around at his crew, who were all staring at the screen with various expressions of confusion and disbelief. Finally, he cleared his throat and stepped forward. Sorry about that, Jake said, speaking toward the screen. We seem to have taken a wrong turn somewhere. Our navigation system malfunctioned and we ended up here by accident. We're just a mining crew from Earth. We're not looking for any trouble. The alien officer's expression did not change, but something flickered in those black eyes. Earth? There is no world called Earth in the Imperial database. You will identify your species and your allegiance immediately. Human, Jake replied simply. From the Sol system. Look, I know this probably looks suspicious, us showing up in the middle of what appears to be a space battle, but I can assure you it was completely accidental. If you could just point us toward the nearest jump gate or give us some coordinates, we'll get out of your hair. There was a long silence. Jake could hear the faint hum of the ship's life support systems and the quiet beeping of various instruments. On the screen, the alien officer appeared to be consulting with someone off camera. Finally, the being turned back to face them. You will maintain your current position and make no aggressive moves. Imperial forces are approaching your vessel. Any attempt to flee or resist will be met with immediate destruction. The screen went dark. Tom whistled low under his breath. Well, this is a fine mess. Captain, Rick said quietly, I'm reading multiple ships changing course toward us. Big ones. They'll be here in about 10 minutes. Jake ran a hand through his graying hair and looked out at the stars that were definitely not the ones visible from the solar system. Somewhere in the distance, massive ships were maneuvering in formations that spoke of military precision and overwhelming firepower. All right, people, he said finally. I think we're about to have some very interesting visitors. Lisa, make sure nothing on this ship looks like a weapon. Tom, secure any loose equipment. Rick, keep monitoring their approach but don't do anything that might be seen as hostile. As his crew went about their tasks with professional calm, Jake settled back into his chair and watched the approaching ships grow larger on the sensor display. He had faced down claim jumpers, equipment failures, and the occasional space pirate, but this was definitely a new experience. So, he said to nobody in particular, I don't suppose anyone knows if our insurance covers accidental interdimensional travel. The docking bay of the Imperial warship Eternal Dominion was larger than the entire mining station where Jake's crew usually sold their ore. Rows of fighter craft lined the walls, each one sleek and deadly, painted in the gold and silver colors of the Valdorian Empire. Armed soldiers in powered armor stood at attention as the frontier's edge was guided into place by tractor beams. Jake watched through the viewport as dozens of aliens in military uniforms assembled on the deck below. They all had that same pale, blue-gray skin and those unsettling black eyes. Most carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Well, he said to his crew, I guess we're about to find out what galactic hospitality looks like. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss, and Jake stepped through first, followed by Lisa, Tom, and Rick. The artificial gravity on the alien ship felt slightly heavier than Earth normal, and the air had a faint metallic taste. A tall figure in an elaborate uniform approached them. This one was clearly female, with the same alien features but carrying herself with the unmistakable authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. Gold insignia covered her chest, and a ceremonial sword hung at her side. I am Admiral Kestal Arwen of the Imperial Navy, she said, her voice carrying easily across the vast space. You are prisoners of the Valdorian Empire, suspected of espionage and violation of military operational zones. Jake looked around at the impressive display of military might, then back at the Admiral. Jake Morrison, captain of the mining vessel, Frontier's Edge. And I have to say, this is probably the most official welcome we've ever received. Usually when we dock somewhere, we just get a guy with a clipboard asking about our cargo manifest. The Admiral's expression didn't change, but Jake noticed several of the nearby soldiers glancing at each other. He got the impression that prisoners didn't usually make small talk with their captors. You will be questioned about your presence in this system and your allegiance to enemy forces, Admiral Tallerwin continued. Any deception or resistance will be met with severe consequences. Lisa stepped forward, looking around the docking bay with obvious professional interest. Excuse me, Admiral, but could I ask who designed your power distribution system? I noticed some really interesting conduit routing on our way in here. The question seemed to catch the Admiral off guard. What? The power grid, Lisa explained, pointing up at the overhead systems. You've got some kind of plasma relay network. That's way more efficient than anything we use back home. I'm an engineer and I have to admit I'm pretty impressed. Though if you don't mind me saying, you might be able to squeeze another 15% efficiency out of it if you rerouted the secondary feeds through a parallel matrix instead of a serial one. There was a moment of complete silence in the docking bay. Admiral Tallerwin stared at Lisa as if she had grown a second head. You are analyzing Imperial military technology? The Admiral asked slowly. Well, yeah, Lisa replied. It's really clever work. Whoever your engineers are, they know their stuff. Though I bet Tom here could help you with some of the maintenance issues. Your plasma couplers are running a little hot. Tom nodded enthusiastically. She's right. I could hear them cycling from inside our ship. Probably need to replace the thermal regulators every few months, right? We had the same problem with our mining lasers until we figured out how to recalibrate the cooling systems. Rick was looking around the docking bay with the casual interest of someone who had seen plenty of spaceports. Nice setup you've got here. How many ships can you service at once? Our home port can handle maybe 50 vessels at a time, but this looks like it could take at least 300. Admiral Tallerwin looked from one human to another, clearly struggling to process what she was hearing. You are prisoners, she said, as if reminding herself as much as them. You are supposed to be afraid. Afraid of what? Jake asked. You folks seem professional enough. Your ship is well maintained, your crew knows their jobs, and nobody's pointed any weapons at us yet. Should we be worried about something? I have conquered 17 star systems, the Admiral said, her voice rising slightly. Entire species have surrendered rather than face the might of my fleet. Worlds have burned at my command. Jake nodded, politely. That sounds like a lot of responsibility. Must be tough managing that many different operations at once. How do you handle the logistics? Fuel, supplies, personnel rotation? The Admiral stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to one of her officers and said something in rapid Valdorian. The officer responded with what sounded like confusion. Take them to the interrogation chambers, Admiral Tallerwin finally ordered. I will question them personally. The interrogation chamber was clearly designed to intimidate. Dark walls, harsh lighting, and chairs that were deliberately uncomfortable. Jake and his crew were separated and questioned individually, but it quickly became apparent that the Valdorians were not getting the results they expected. When it was Jake's turn, Admiral Tallerwin sat across from him at a metal table, her black eyes fixed on his face. What is your mission in this sector? She demanded. Asteroid mining, Jake replied. We were working a claim near Jupiter when our new FTL drive malfunctioned. Next thing we knew, we were here watching you folks have a space battle. Jupiter? What system is that in? Sol. Our home system. It's about 4.5 billion miles from our sun, mostly made of gas, has about 79 moons. Pretty much useless except for mining the asteroids in its orbital path. The Admiral consulted a datapad. There is no system called Sol in our databases. Jake shrugged. Well, it's a big galaxy. I'm not surprised you haven't cataloged everything, yet. We've only been exploring outside our own system for about 200 years, and we're still finding new things all the time. What weapons does your ship carry? Mining lasers mostly. Some explosive charges for breaking up large asteroids. Nothing that would be much use in a space battle. What is your military rank? I don't have one. I'm a civilian contractor. Used. To work for a big mining corporation, but I bought my own ship about 10 years ago. Better money and independent operations. Plus, I get to choose my own crew. Admiral Teller Wynne leaned back in her chair, clearly frustrated. You show no fear. You ask questions about our technology. You treat this interrogation as if it were a casual conversation. What are you? Jake considered the question seriously. Tired, mostly. It's been a long day and we're a very long way from home. Look, Admiral, I get that we probably caused some problems by showing up in the middle of your battle. If there's some kind of fine or compensation we need to pay, we can work something out. We've got a cargo hold full of refined metals that are probably worth something in any economy. Just then, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency lights flashed and Jake could feel the deck vibrating under his feet as the massive vessel changed course. Admiral Teller Wynne was on her feet instantly, speaking rapidly into a communication device on her wrist. Jake couldn't understand the language, but he recognized the tone of urgent military communications. Rebel attack, the Admiral said grimly. They've found us. Before Jake could respond, the ship shuddered under the impact of enemy fire. The lights flickered, and somewhere in the distance he could hear the sound of secondary explosions. Your people will remain here, Admiral Teller Wynne ordered as she headed for the door. Guards will ensure you do not interfere with combat operations. But, as she reached the exit, another massive impact shook the ship. This time the lights went out completely, replaced by the red glow of emergency illumination. In the distance, Jake could hear the sound of atmosphere venting and damage control. Teams being called to multiple sections. Admiral, Jake called out, sounds like you've got some serious damage. If you need extra hands for damage control, my crew and I have experience with emergency repairs. She turned back to look at him, and for the first time since they'd met, Jake saw uncertainty in those black eyes. Another explosion rocked the ship, and this time Jake could smell smoke in the recycled air. This is your specialty? Admiral Teller Wynne asked. Jake stood up and brushed dust off his jumpsuit. Ma'am, we've been keeping an old mining ship running in deep space for 5 years. If there's one thing we know how to do, it's fix things that are broken. The Admiral looked at him for a long moment, then spoke rapidly into her communicator. A few seconds later, the door to the interrogation chamber opened and one of her officers entered. Take them to engineering, she ordered. If they can help, let them. If they interfere, shoot them. As they were escorted through corridors filled with smoke and running crew members, Tom looked around with professional interest. Plasma conduit rupture in Section 12, he said to nobody in particular. Probably need to reroute through the backup systems and seal the breach from the outside. Lisa nodded, examining the damage they passed. Power grid is overloaded too. They're trying to run combat systems on emergency backup. That's not going to work for very long. Rick was studying the ship's layout as they moved. If this is like most military vessels, engineering should be about 3 levels down and toward the center of the ship, most protected area. Jake just shook his head and followed their guard through the chaos. Somehow he didn't think this day was going to get any simpler. The capital world of Nexus Prime was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. From the viewport of the Imperial shuttle, he could see that the entire planet was one massive city, with towers that reached into the clouds and transportation networks that spanned continents. Billions of lights twinkled across the surface like a constellation that had been spread across a world. Impressive, Lisa murmured, pressing her face to the window. The power requirements alone must be incredible. Their escort, Captain Drenvorth, glanced at her with what might have been amusement. The Imperial capital houses 30 billion citizens from 47 different species. It is the center of civilization in this galaxy. Tom whistled softly. 30 billion? How do you handle waste management for that many people and food distribution? The logistics must be a nightmare. Captain Vorth looked puzzled. These are not concerns for prisoners. We're not really prisoners anymore, are we? Rick pointed out reasonably. I mean, you're taking us to meet your emperor. That sounds more like a diplomatic meeting. Jake had to admit Rick was right. After their help with the damage control during the rebel attack, Admiral Teller Wynne had declared them persons of interest, rather than prisoners. The Valdorians seemed genuinely baffled by humans who treated emergency repairs like routine maintenance and space battles like workplace accidents. The shuttle landed in a docking bay that was larger than most Earth cities. Hundreds of different types of aircraft came and went in a carefully choreographed dance of traffic control. Their escort led them through corridors lined with what were obviously representatives from dozens of different alien species, all wearing the elaborate clothing that marked them as diplomats or nobles. "The Emperor wishes to meet the beings who show no fear of imperial power," Captain Vorth explained as they walked. "You will be presented at court along with the other petitioners." "Petitioners?" Jake asked. "Those who seek audience with His Imperial Majesty. Ambassadors, trade representatives, military commanders seeking approval for campaigns. You will wait your turn and approach the throne when called." They entered a vast chamber that took Jake's breath away. The ceiling was so high it was lost in shadows, supported by pillars that seemed to be made of solid gold. Tapestries hung from the walls showing battle scenes and conquest, while holographic displays showed star maps marking the extent of imperial territory. At the far end of the chamber, on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal, sat Emperor Drakthul Valdor. Even at this distance, Jake could see that this was a being who radiated power and authority. The Emperor was larger than the other Valdorians they had met, with elaborate tattoos covering his arms and a crown that seemed to be made of captured starlight. "You will wait here," Captain Vorth instructed, indicating a section near the back of the chamber where other petitioners were standing in neat rows. Jake looked around at the other beings waiting for their turn. Most were clearly nervous, some visibly trembling. A few were kneeling, apparently unable to stand in the presence of imperial authority. One group appeared to be from a species that resembled large insects, and they were making soft clicking sounds that Jake assumed meant distress. "This is quite a setup," he commented quietly to his crew. "Very impressive, though I have to say the air circulation could use some work. It's pretty stuffy in here." Lisa nodded, looking up at the architectural details. "The acoustics are amazing, though. I bet you can hear a whisper from anywhere in this room up at that throne." A court official in elaborate robes approached them. This one was different from the military Valdorians they had met, with more ornate clothing and an attitude that screamed bureaucracy. "You are the humans?" he asked, consulting a datapad. "That's us," Jake confirmed. "You will be presented shortly. When your names are called, you will approach the throne. You will kneel before His Imperial Majesty and wait to be recognized. You will speak only when spoken to, and you will address the Emperor as Your Imperial Majesty at all times. Is this understood?" Jake exchanged glances with his crew. "Well, I appreciate the briefing, but we don't really do the kneeling thing. We can be respectful, but where we come from, we believe all people are equal." The court official stared at him as if he had announced his intention to set the palace on fire. "You refuse to show proper respect to the Emperor?" "Not refuse," Jake said carefully. "Just different customs. We'll shake hands, be polite, use appropriate titles, but we don't kneel to anyone." The official made rapid notes on his datapad, muttering under his breath in Valdorian. Finally, he looked up at them again. "This is highly irregular. The Emperor may take offense." "I hope not," Jake replied. "We're not trying to be difficult. It's just not something humans do." Before the official could respond, a voice that seemed to fill the entire chamber announced their names. Jake straightened his shoulders and began walking toward the throne, his crew falling in behind him. The walk seemed to take forever. Every step echoed in the vast space, and Jake could feel thousands of eyes watching their approach. Other petitioners and court officials whispered among themselves, clearly fascinated by the aliens who were walking rather than crawling toward the Emperor. As they got closer, Jake could see that Emperor Drakthul Valdor was indeed an impressive figure. Nearly 3 meters tall, with the pale blue skin and black eyes of his species, but somehow more imposing than any Valdorian they had yet met. His robes were decorated with precious metals and gems, and the crown on his head seemed to contain actual miniature stars. They stopped about 10 feet from the throne. Around them, Jake could see court officials, guards, and advisors all watching expectantly. The silence stretched out for what felt like several minutes. Finally, Emperor Valdor spoke, his voice deep and carrying easily through the chamber. You are the humans who appeared in our space during the Battle of Kepler's Gate. That's right, Your Majesty, Jake replied, then stepped forward and extended his hand. Jake Morrison, pleased to meet you. The silence in the throne room was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Emperor Valdor stared down at the offered hand with an expression that was impossible to read. Finally, the Emperor leaned forward slightly. You offer to touch the Imperial person? It's called a handshake, Jake explained. It's how humans greet each other. Shows respect and friendship. You are not kneeling. No, sir. Like I told your court official, it's not something we do. No disrespect intended, but where we come from, we believe in treating everyone as equals. Emperor Valdor sat back in his throne and studied the four humans for a long moment. Jake could hear whispers from the court officials, and he was pretty sure some of the guards were reaching for their weapons. Tell me, humans, the Emperor said finally, why should I not have you executed for your disrespect? Jake considered the question seriously. Well, Your Majesty, I suppose you could. But we're not your subjects. We're not from your empire, and we didn't choose to come here. We're just trying to get home to our families. Executing us for having different customs would be like us executing you for not wearing blue jeans. Blue jeans? Work clothes. The point is, we're different species from different places with different ways of doing things. That doesn't make either of us wrong. The Emperor was quiet for another long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he began to laugh. It was a deep rumbling sound that filled the chamber and echoed off the walls. Fascinating, he said, still chuckling. In 50 years of rule, no one has ever compared imperial protocol to clothing choices. He leaned forward again, studying Jake with obvious interest. Tell me, human Jake Morrison, what do you think of my empire? Jake looked around the vast throne room, then back at the Emperor. It's very impressive, Your Majesty. Clearly took a lot of work to build. Though I have to ask, are you happy with how it's running? Happy? Well, from what we've seen, you've got a pretty serious rebellion going on. Ships shooting at each other, people dying, resources being wasted on warfare instead of building things. That can't be good for anyone. The court officials began whispering furiously among themselves. Several guards took half steps forward before stopping at a gesture from the Emperor. You criticize the Empire? Emperor Valdor asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Not criticize, Jake said carefully. Just wondering if there might be a better way to handle things. Where we come from, when we have disputes, we usually try talking first before shooting. And if talking fails? Jake shrugged. Then we keep talking until it works. Usually takes longer, but fewer people end up dead. Emperor Valdor studied him for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he stood up from his throne, and Jake realized just how imposing the alien ruler really was. You interest me, human. I will make you an offer. Serve me. Become my personal advisors. I will give you wealth beyond measure, technology your species cannot imagine, and power over entire star systems. Jake looked at his crew, then back at the Emperor. That's a very generous offer, Your Majesty, but we'll have to pass. We've got jobs back home, families, commitments. We just want to get back to our regular lives. The whispers from the court became a low roar of shocked conversations. Jake was pretty sure that refusing the Emperor's direct offer was not something that happened very often. Emperor Valdor stared at them for a long moment, then began laughing again. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. You refuse imperial favor as casually as you refuse imperial protocol. He sat back down and gestured to one of his advisors. House, them in the diplomatic quarter. Give them whatever they need. I want to study these humans who fear nothing and want nothing. As they were escorted from the throne room, Jake heard Tom mutter under his breath. Well, that could have gone worse. Could have gone better too, Rick replied quietly. Jake just shook his head. Somehow, he was beginning to think getting home was going to be more complicated than fixing their FTL drive. The diplomatic quarters on Nexus Prime were more luxurious than any hotel Jake had ever stayed in. Each room was larger than his apartment back on Mars Station, complete with full environmental controls, entertainment systems that could access the cultural archives of 47 different species, and a food synthesizer that could apparently create cuisine from anywhere in the galaxy. Despite the comfortable surroundings, Jake was getting restless. They had been guests of the Empire for 2 weeks now, and every day brought new requests for meetings with various officials who all wanted to study the humans who had somehow ended the Battle of Kepler's Gate just by showing up. "Captain?" Lisa called from her workstation, where she had been analyzing Imperial technical databases with the enthusiasm of a child in a candy store. "You need to see this." Jake walked over to look at the holographic display she had created. It showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with different colored zones marking Imperial territory, rebel-controlled space, and contested areas. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "The whole conflict," Lisa replied, manipulating the display to show different time periods. "I've been studying the war from a logistics perspective, and I think I've figured out the fundamental problem." Tom and Rick gathered around to see what she had discovered. The display showed resource flows, trade routes, and military deployments across hundreds of star systems. "They're fighting over scarcity that doesn't actually exist," Lisa explained. "Look at this. The Empire controls about 60% of the inhabited systems, but they're concentrated in areas with older, partially depleted worlds. The rebels hold maybe 20%, but they're mostly in frontier areas with limited industrial capacity." "And the other 20%? Rick asked. "Contested space. Systems that both sides claim but neither can effectively control because they're too busy fighting each other." Jake studied the display, beginning to see what Lisa was getting at. "So both sides are fighting over resources they can't properly exploit because they're spending everything on the war." "Exactly. But here's the really stupid part." Lisa highlighted several sections of the galaxy. There are entire regions that nobody has even explored yet. Thousands of potentially habitable worlds, asteroid fields full of rare metals, gas giants perfect for fuel extraction. They could double the available resources in this galaxy just by working together to expand, instead of fighting over what's already settled. Tom shook his head. "Classic territorial thinking. It's like two mining crews fighting over one played-out asteroid while ignoring the virgin belt right next to them." Before Jake could respond, their door chimed with the sound that indicated an official visitor. A moment later, a young Valdorian woman entered, but she was not wearing Imperial colors. Instead, she wore the simple gray clothing of civilian diplomatic personnel. "I am Nara Quintel," she said, glancing nervously at the door behind her. "I represent certain parties who are interested in speaking with you privately." Jake exchanged glances with his crew. "Certain parties?" "The rebellion," Nara said quietly. "We have been watching your interactions with Imperial forces. Your unique perspective on our conflict has attracted attention from our leadership." "Let me guess," Rick said dryly. "You want us to join your cause, fight the evil Empire, restore freedom to the galaxy?" Nara looked surprised. "Actually, no, we want to hire you as consultants." That was unexpected. Jake gestured to one of the comfortable seating areas. "Why don't you sit down and tell us what you have in mind?" Nara settled into one of the chairs, still glancing nervously at the door. "Our intelligence reports indicate that you have been analyzing the overall strategic situation. We believe you may have insights that could help end this conflict. The war has been going on for 50 years, she continued. Millions have died. Entire worlds have been devastated. Both sides are exhausted, but neither can achieve decisive victory." Lisa leaned forward. "What have you tried so far?" "Military. Solutions mostly. Attempts to capture key Imperial worlds, disrupt their supply lines, turn their subject species against them. Nothing has worked." "Because you're playing the same game they are," Tom observed. "Fighting over the same territory, with the same assumptions." Nara nodded sadly. "Our leaders know this, but they don't see any alternative. The Empire will never willingly give up power, and we cannot simply surrender and accept tyranny." Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. Finally, he looked up at Nara. "What if there was a third option? Something that didn't require either side to surrender or be defeated?" "What do you mean?" Jake gestured toward Lisa's galactic display. "Show her what you found." Lisa activated the hologram again, walking Nara through the resource analysis and the unexplored regions of the galaxy. As she talked, Jake could see understanding dawning in the rebel representative's eyes. "You're suggesting expansion instead of conquest," Nara said slowly. "Think about it," Jake replied. "Right now, you're fighting over a pie that's already been sliced up. But what if you could make the pie bigger? What if both sides worked together to explore and settle new worlds instead of fighting over old ones? The Empire would never agree to share power." "Who said anything about sharing power?" Rick asked. "We're talking about expanding opportunity. New worlds, new resources, new possibilities for everyone." Tom nodded enthusiastically. "It's like when the asteroid belt was first opened for mining. Initially, everyone thought there wasn't enough to go around, so we had claim wars and corporate conflicts. But once people realized how much was actually out there, the fighting stopped. There was enough for everyone." Nara stared at the display for a long moment. "This would require cooperation between the Empire and the Rebellion. That seems impossible, does it?" Jake asked. "Or does it just seem impossible because nobody's ever tried it?" Over the next several hours, they worked out the basic framework of what Jake privately thought of as the most ambitious peace plan in galactic history. The core concept was simple. Instead of fighting over existing territory, both sides would work together to explore and colonize the vast unexplored regions of the galaxy. The Empire gets to keep their current territory and government structure, Lisa explained, updating the holographic display as they talked. The Rebellion gets to establish their own independent colonies in new systems. Both sides benefit from shared exploration data, joint research projects, and coordinated resource extraction. "What about the contested systems?" Nara asked. "Neutral. Territory," Tom suggested. "Jointly administered for trade and diplomacy. Nobody owns them, but everyone can use them." Jake could see that Nara was intrigued by the possibility, but also skeptical. "Even if our leadership agreed to consider this, how would we convince the Empire? They have no reason to negotiate. From their perspective, they're winning the war." "Are they?" Rick asked. "Because from what we've seen, they're spending enormous resources on military operations that aren't actually gaining them anything permanent. Meanwhile, their economy is focused on war production instead of growth and development." Before Nara could respond, their door chimed again. This time, the visitor was Captain Vorth, accompanied by 2 Imperial guards. "The humans will accompany me," he announced. "Emperor Valdor wishes to speak with them immediately." Jake looked at Nara, who had gone pale. "Will she be safe here?" Captain Vorth glanced at the rebel representative with what might have been amusement. "Imperial security is aware of all visitors to the diplomatic quarter. As long as no laws are broken, all guests are under Imperial protection." The throne room was less crowded this time, with only a handful of advisors present. Emperor Valdor was not on his throne, but instead standing before a large holographic display showing military reports from across the galaxy. "Humans," he said without turning around. "My intelligence services inform me that you have been meeting with rebel representatives." Jake felt his crew tense behind him, but he kept his voice calm. "Yes, Your Majesty. A young woman named Nara came to speak with us." "And what did you discuss?" "The war, mostly. How it might be possible to end it." "Emperor," Valdor finally turned to face them. "You believe you can succeed where 50 years of military campaigns have failed?" "Maybe," Jake replied honestly. "But not through more fighting." The Emperor gestured to the holographic display. "Explain." For the next hour, Jake and his crew presented their analysis to the Emperor and his advisors. Lisa's resource maps, Tom's logistical assessments, Rick's strategic overview, and Jake's overall framework for a cooperative expansion program. The Imperial advisors were skeptical at first, asking pointed questions about implementation, security concerns, and the political implications of negotiating with rebels. But as the presentation continued, Jake could see that they were beginning to understand the potential benefits. "You propose that the Empire abandon its goal of total galactic dominance," one advisor observed. "I propose that the Empire achieve something better," Jake replied. Instead of ruling over a galaxy damaged by 50 years of war, you could lead a galaxy unified in exploration and growth. Emperor Valdor was quiet for a long time, studying the displays and consulting quietly with his advisors. Finally, he looked back at the humans. This plan would require me to negotiate with rebels who have been trying to destroy my empire for half a century. Yes, sir. It would mean acknowledging that military conquest is not the only path to imperial greatness. Yes, sir. It would require trusting former enemies to honor agreements and work toward common goals. Jake nodded. Yes, sir. It would require trust, compromise, and a willingness to try something that's never been done before. Emperor Valdor walked over to one of the large windows that looked out over the capital city. Billions of lights sparkled in the distance, representing the lives and dreams of countless beings from across the galaxy. 50 years, he said quietly. 50 years of war, and what do I have to show for it? Half a galaxy that fears me. Resources, drained by military spending. Worlds that submit only because they lack the strength to resist. He turned back to face them. Your proposal offers something different. What's that, Your Majesty? The possibility that I might be remembered as the emperor who brought peace to the galaxy instead of the one who conquered it. Jake waited, sensing that this was a crucial moment. I will consider your proposal, Emperor Valdor said finally. But first I want to test your theory about cooperation and trust. How? The Emperor smiled, and for the first time since they had met him, Jake saw genuine warmth in those black eyes. You will help me arrange a meeting with rebel leadership. If former enemies can sit at the same table without killing each other, perhaps there is hope for this galaxy after all. As they left the throne room, Tom shook his head in amazement. I can't believe we just convinced a galactic emperor to consider making peace with his enemies. We haven't convinced anyone yet, Jake replied. But it's a start. Rick looked back toward the throne room. Think it will actually work? Jake thought about everything they had seen since arriving in this galaxy. The waste of resources, the endless cycle of violence, the billions of beings caught between two sides that seemed incapable of finding common ground. It has to work, he said finally. Because the alternative is watching this war go on for another 50 years. Lisa was already working on her portable display, refining their proposal. We'll need detailed implementation schedules, resource allocation plans, and probably 100 different contingency protocols. And we'll need to figure out how to get rebel leadership to agree to meet with the Emperor, Tom added. Jake nodded. One step at a time. First, we see if Nara can convince her people that this is worth trying. Then we see if the Emperor is serious about negotiating. As they walked back through the corridors of the Imperial Palace, Jake couldn't help but think that being a mining ship captain had been a lot simpler than being an accidental galactic peace negotiator. But somehow, despite everything that had gone wrong with their simple trip home from the asteroid belt, he was beginning to think that maybe they had ended up exactly where they were supposed to be. The conference room on the neutral station, Harmony Point, had been carefully designed to avoid favoring either side in the negotiations. The table was perfectly round with no head or foot, and representatives from both the Empire and the Rebellion sat in alternating positions. Holographic displays showed proposed colony sites, resource allocation charts, and draft treaties that had taken 3 months to negotiate. Jake sat between Emperor Valdor and Nara, still somewhat amazed that he had somehow become the mediator in the most important peace talks in galactic history. Around the table, military commanders who had been trying to kill each other for decades were now arguing about mining rights and terraforming schedules. The Kepler sector contains 17 potentially habitable worlds, Admiral Talarwin was saying, pointing to the holographic display. Imperial surveys indicate that at least 8 could be terraformed within 50 years. General Marcus Webb, the Rebellion's chief military strategist, studied the data. Our intelligence suggests that number is conservative. With proper resource allocation, we could have viable colonies on 12 of those worlds within 30 years. Lisa looked up from her portable workstation. Actually, if you coordinate your terraforming efforts and share atmospheric processing, Technology, you could probably do all 17 worlds in about 25 years. Both military leaders stared at her. Share technology? Admiral Talarwin asked. Well, yeah. You're both trying to accomplish the same basic goal, making dead worlds suitable for life. Pooling your research and resources would be way more efficient than duplicating each other's work. Tom nodded from his position at another workstation. It's like when we were setting up mining operations in the outer asteroid belt. Every independent crew was developing their own equipment and techniques. Took us years to realize we'd all be more profitable if we shared the basic technology and competed on efficiency instead of innovation. Emperor Valdor leaned back in his chair. You propose that Imperial scientists work directly with rebel researchers? Why not? Rick asked from where he was reviewing navigation charts for the proposed exploration missions. They're all trying to solve the same problems: atmospheric composition, soil chemistry, weather management. Scientific knowledge doesn't have political allegiances. General Webb looked skeptical. There are security concerns. Shared research could lead to compromised military applications. Jake sighed. General, with respect, you're not going to be military enemies anymore. You're going to be neighbors working toward common goals. If this peace treaty works, your biggest security concern should be whether the other side is meeting their colonization quotas. The negotiations had been going like this for weeks. Every time they solved one problem, someone would raise a new concern about trust, security, or precedent. Jake was beginning to understand why galactic conflicts tended to last for generations. Perhaps we should review the resource allocation protocols again, Nara suggested diplomatically. For the next several hours, they went through the detailed plans that would govern the joint expansion program. The Empire would maintain control over their current territory while providing industrial support for new colony ships. The rebellion would establish independent governments in the new systems while sharing exploration data and research. The most contested systems would be converted to neutral trading posts governed by joint councils with representatives from both sides. It was complicated, unprecedented, and absolutely necessary if they wanted to avoid another 50 years of warfare. There is one remaining issue, Emperor Valdor said as the day's session wound down. The question of enforcement. What happens if one side violates the agreement? We've been thinking about that, Jake replied, and we think the answer is simple. You don't need enforcement mechanisms if both sides benefit more from cooperation than from conflict. Explain. Lisa activated a new holographic display showing economic projections. Within 10 years of starting the expansion program, both sides will be seeing economic benefits that far exceed anything they could gain through warfare. Trade between Imperial and Rebel systems will create interdependent prosperity. Breaking the treaty would mean economic disaster for everyone involved. Mutual benefit as a form of mutual security, General Webb mused. Interesting concept. Admiral Talarwin nodded slowly. It has historical precedent. The trade alliances in the Inner Rim have maintained peace for over 2 centuries through economic interdependence. Emperor Valdor stood up and walked to the large viewport that showed the stars beyond the station. 50 years ago, when this war began, I believed that peace could only be achieved through strength. That order could only be maintained through control. He turned back to face the assembled negotiators. These humans have shown me a different path, one that leads to growth instead of conquest, cooperation instead of dominance. Jake felt a moment of pride, quickly followed by exhaustion. Your Majesty, we're honored to have been part of this process. But now that you have a framework for peace, we'd really like to go home. The Emperor smiled. Of course, but first there is the matter of the signing ceremony. The ceremony took place a week later in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime. Representatives from every species in the galaxy were present, along with holographic observers from systems too distant to send physical delegates. The hall was filled with beings who had never imagined they would see the end of the galactic civil war. Jake and his crew sat in the diplomatic section, wearing their best civilian clothes and trying not to look as out of place as they felt. The signing itself was surprisingly simple. Emperor Valdor and President Quintel, the newly elected leader of the Rebel Alliance, each signed the treaty using traditional instruments from their respective cultures. By the authority vested in us by our peoples, President Quintel declared, we hereby establish the Galactic Cooperation Accord, marking the end of hostilities and the beginning of joint expansion into the unexplored regions of our galaxy. The Rico. Applause was thunderous, echoing through the vast hall and broadcast to billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Jake found himself clapping along with everyone else, still somewhat amazed that their accidental arrival had led to this moment. After the ceremony, there was a reception that seemed to include half the galaxy. Diplomats, military officers, scientists, and civilians from dozens of species mingled in celebration. Jake lost count of how many beings wanted to shake his hand or offer him positions in their governments. The Andorian Federation would be honored to have you serve as our ambassador to Earth, one diplomat offered. The Mining Guild of Proxima would like to discuss exclusive contracts for human expertise, said another. Our research institute could use consultants familiar with human problem-solving methods, a third added. Jake politely declined them all, explaining that they just wanted to go home to their regular lives. The concept seemed to baffle most of the aliens, who couldn't understand why anyone would choose a simple existence over galactic influence. Finally, Emperor Valdor approached them, carrying an ornate container that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. A gift, he said, presenting the container to Jake. Complete star charts for every system in this galaxy, along with navigation data that will allow your people to return whenever they choose. Jake accepted the gift with appropriate ceremony. Thank you, Your Majesty. Though I have to ask, what makes you think Earth will want to establish formal relations with your galaxy? Because, the Emperor replied with a smile, any species that can produce beings like yourselves is one we very much want to know better. Admiral Talarwin joined them, looking more relaxed than Jake had ever seen her. Your ship has been fully repaired and upgraded. New FTL drive, improved navigation systems, and enough supplies for the journey home. Plus a few extra features, Tom added with a grin. He had spent the last week working with Imperial engineers on the upgrades. Wait until you see what they did with the mining equipment. 3 days later, they were back aboard the Frontier's Edge, preparing for departure. The ship looked much the same from the outside, but Jake could feel the difference in the subtle vibrations of more powerful engines and more efficient systems. Course laid in for Earth, Rick reported from the pilot station. New FTL drive is showing full readiness. All systems green, Lisa added from her engineering station. Power output is stable, navigation is locked, and life support is running, better than it has in years. Jake settled into his command chair and looked around at his crew. They all seemed eager to get home, but he could see in their faces the same mixture of pride and disbelief that he was feeling. All right, people, he said finally. Let's go home. The jump to hyperspace was smoother than anything they had experienced with their old drive. Instead of the violent twisting of space-time they were used to, the transition felt almost gentle. The stars outside the viewport stretched into familiar lines of light, and they were on their way back to Sol system. The journey that had taken them months to make by accident was completed in just 2 weeks with their new equipment. When Earth's sun appeared on their sensors, Jake felt a wave of emotion that surprised him with its intensity. There she is, Rick said quietly. Home. They were met at Mars Station by a rather skeptical customs official, who couldn't understand why their ship was equipped with technology that didn't exist in any Earth database. Jake's report of their accidental journey to another galaxy was filed away with a note suggesting psychological evaluation for the entire crew. Space madness, the bureaucrat muttered, stamping their clearance papers. Happens to mining crews all the time. Too much time in the deep black. Jake didn't bother to argue. He collected his crew's pay, filed their mineral extraction reports, and made plans for their next mining expedition. It felt wonderfully normal and routine. But 3 months later, as they were preparing to depart for the asteroid belt, Rick picked up something unusual on the long-range communication array. Captain, he said, staring at his instruments in confusion, I'm receiving a transmission on a frequency that shouldn't exist. It's from outside the solar system. Way outside. Jake hurried over to look at the display. The signal was definitely artificial, definitely intelligent, and definitely from somewhere beyond Earth's most distant probes. Can you decode it? Asked. Rick worked his controls for several minutes, then looked up with a grin. It's from the Valdorian galaxy. They're requesting permission to establish formal diplomatic contact with Earth's government. Jake sank into his chair and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, across the vast distances of space, an entire galaxy was waiting to meet humanity. Scientists eager to share knowledge, traders ready to exchange goods, and explorers preparing for joint missions to worlds that had never seen intelligent life. So, he said to his crew, anyone interested in becoming Earth's first interstellar ambassadors? Lisa looked up from her engineering station with a smile. Well, it beats mining asteroids for a living, Tom laughed. Plus, the benefits package is probably better. Rick was already working on calculations for another jump to the Valdorian galaxy. Course laid in, Captain. Ready when you are. Jake leaned back in his chair and thought about their small mining ship becoming the bridge between two galaxies. It wasn't the simple life they had planned, but somehow it felt right. All right, people, he said, reaching for the communication. Controls to contact Earth's government. Looks like we're not retired yet. Outside the viewports, the stars waited with infinite patience, holding secrets and possibilities that would keep humanity busy for generations to come. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, Jake Morrison and his crew prepared to once again step into the unknown, bringing with them the most powerful force in the universe. The simple human belief that any problem could be solved if people just worked together. The massive alien ship blocked out the sun over New York City. Its dark metal hull stretched for miles across the sky, casting shadows that made the entire city feel cold and dead. People on the streets below looked up in terror as smaller ships flew around the giant vessel like angry wasps. Ambassador Rita Kane stood in the United Nations building, watching the alien ship through the tall windows. Her hands were steady, but her heart was beating fast. She knew that in 1 hour, she would have to face the aliens and deliver humanity's response to their demands. The response that would shock everyone. On the alien ship, Supreme Commander Vextar walked through the command center. His red eyes glowed with satisfaction as he watched the humans scurrying around like frightened insects below. The Draconis Empire had conquered 17 star systems already, and Earth would be the easiest victory yet. Commander, the human ambassador is ready to speak with us, said one of his officers. Vexitar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Excellent. Let us hear their pathetic pleas for mercy. Rita Kane was brought aboard the alien ship in a small transport vessel. The inside of the ship was dark and cold with strange symbols glowing on the walls. Alien guards with forearms and scaly skin led her through long corridors until she reached a massive chamber. The chamber was filled with alien commanders from across the Draconis Empire. They sat in tall chairs arranged in a circle, all looking down at Rita as she stood in the center. Their eyes glowed in the darkness like stars in the night sky. Supreme Commander Vextar spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. Human Ambassador, your species has exactly one choice. Surrender completely or we will destroy every city on your planet. You have seen what happened to the Zentari worlds. You know what happened to the crystal cities of Nex Prime. Choose wisely. Rita looked up at the alien commander without fear. She had prepared for this moment for years. Everything depended on what she said next. Supreme Commander, she said in a clear voice, humanity has made its decision. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small device. The aliens tensed, thinking it might be a weapon, but it was only a holographic projector. A blue light appeared in the air, showing pages of text written in both human and alien languages. This is Earth's official surrender document, Rita announced. The aliens looked surprised. They had expected humans to beg for mercy or try to negotiate. Instead, this human was giving them exactly what they wanted without any fight at all. Rita continued reading from the document. Humanity agrees to complete disarmament of all military forces. We agree to allow the extraction of all planetary resources. We agree to the relocation of human populations to work colonies as the Empire requires. We surrender all claims to Earth and accept Draconis rule. The alien commanders began talking excitedly among themselves. This was almost too easy. They had prepared for months of fighting, but the humans were giving up without firing a single shot. Vextar raised his hand for silence. This is most satisfactory, human. Your species shows wisdom in recognizing our superiority. The Empire will show mercy to those who submit without resistance. But Rita was not finished. There is one more thing, Commander. As a gesture of good faith, we would like to invite your occupation forces to attend a ceremony on Earth in 3 days. We will formally hand over control of our planet to the Empire in front of all humanity. The aliens were even more pleased. A public surrender ceremony would send a clear message to any other species that might think about resisting the Empire. Very well, said Vextar. We accept your invitation. General Krixmar will lead the occupation forces to your planet's surface. You have made the right choice, human. Rita bowed her head respectfully and was escorted back to her transport ship. As she flew back toward Earth, her face showed no emotion. The aliens watching her thought she looked defeated and sad. They had no idea that she was fighting hard, not to smile. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, 3 miles under the water, Admiral Marcus Webb sat in a command center that officially did not exist. The room was filled with screens showing information from around the world and from space. Dozens of officers worked at control stations, all wearing uniforms that no government claimed to own. Webb was watching Rita's meeting with the aliens on a secure video feed. When he heard her deliver the surrender document, he nodded with approval. She had played her part perfectly. Admiral, said one of his officers, all shadow units are reporting ready status. The construction teams have finished the final installations. Webb looked at the massive screens around him. They showed images of the ocean floor where huge structures had been built in secret over the past 20 years. Ships larger than aircraft carriers sat in underwater bays, hidden from alien sensors by technology that the surface world had never seen. What about the surface teams? Webb asked. Captain Fletcher reports that all fake military installations are ready for inspection. Dr. Vasquez confirms that the decoy research facilities will pass alien examination. Everyone knows their roles. Webb turned to look at a special communication device sitting on his desk. It was marked with words that would terrify the aliens if they could read them. Project Shadowfall. Authorization required. On the screens, he watched alien ships beginning to move toward Earth. They were coming down from the massive command ship, ready to begin their occupation of humanity's homeworld. The aliens believed they had won the easiest victory in their empire's history. Webb picked up the communication device and spoke into it quietly. All Shadow Fleet commanders, this is Admiral Webb. Rita has completed Phase 1 successfully. The aliens have taken the bait completely. Responses came back from commanders hidden around the world and in secret bases throughout the solar system. All of them reported that their forces were ready and waiting. Admiral, said another officer, the alien occupation ships will reach the surface in approximately 6 hours. Should we begin Phase 2 preparations? Webb watched the alien ships descending through Earth's atmosphere. They moved slowly and confidently, like predators that knew their prey could not fight back. The aliens had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this day for 2 decades. Not yet, Webb said. Let them land. Let them get comfortable. Let them think they have won. He turned back to the screens showing the massive ships hidden beneath the ocean. Each one was equipped with weapons and technology that would make the aliens' empire tremble. The Shadow Fleet had been humanity's greatest secret, built in absolute secrecy while the world above pretended to be weak and primitive. Rita's transport ship landed at a military base where soldiers were busy destroying equipment and burning documents. It all looked very convincing. The soldiers acted defeated and hopeless, but every one of them was a highly trained Special Forces operative playing a carefully rehearsed role. As the alien occupation ships approached Earth's surface, Webb stood up and walked to the largest screen in the command center. It showed a map of the entire solar system, with dozens of green dots scattered throughout. Each dot represented a Shadow Fleet unit, hidden and waiting. The aliens think they are conquering a primitive world, he said to his officers. They have no idea that they are walking into the most elaborate trap in galactic history. He picked up the communication device one more time. As alien ships began landing in major cities around the world, Webb whispered the words that would change everything. Phase 1 complete. All shadow units prepare for emergence. The trap was set. Now humanity would show the galaxy what they were really made of. 3 days had passed since the aliens landed on Earth. The surrender ceremony was a complete success from the alien point of view. Thousands of humans had gathered in major cities to watch their leaders formally hand over control to the Draconis Empire. The humans looked defeated and hopeless, exactly as the aliens expected. General Krixmar was very pleased with how smoothly the occupation was going. He stood in his temporary command post in Washington, D.C., looking at reports from alien units all over the planet. Every human military base had been taken without any fighting. All the human weapons had been collected and destroyed. It was almost boring. "General," said one of his officers, "the human scientist is here to show us their research facilities." Krixmar looked up to see Dr. Elena Vasquez walking into the command post. She was a small woman with gray hair who looked nervous and frightened. She carried a tablet computer and kept her eyes down like someone who had given up all hope. "Dr. Vasquez," the general said through his translation device, "you will show my technology specialists everything. We want to see all of your research projects and scientific equipment." Elena nodded quickly. "Of course, General. I have prepared a complete tour of our most advanced facilities. Though I must warn you, our technology is very primitive compared to yours." The general smiled. Human modesty was refreshing after dealing with species that had fought back fiercely. "Show us anyway. The Empire is interested in all scientific knowledge, no matter how basic." Elena led a group of alien scientists through what appeared to be humanity's most important research center. She showed them computers that looked ancient compared to alien technology. She demonstrated human weapons that seemed laughably weak. The alien scientists took notes but were clearly not impressed. "This is your most advanced energy weapon?" asked one of the alien scientists, looking at a device that barely glowed. "Yes," Elena said sadly. "We have been trying to develop better weapons for years, but we never succeeded. Your technology is so much more advanced than ours." The aliens exchanged looks that clearly said they agreed completely. Meanwhile, 3 miles beneath the research center, the real Dr. Elena Vasquez worked frantically in a laboratory that contained technology the surface world had never seen. She was making final adjustments to weapon systems that could tear holes in space itself. Around her, dozens of scientists worked on projects that would terrify the aliens if they knew such things existed. "Dr. Vasquez," said her assistant, "the quantum resonance cannons are ready for installation on the Shadow Fleet ships." The real Elena looked up from her work. "Excellent. What about the reality displacement shields?" "All tested and operational. The alien sensors cannot detect anything through them." Elena nodded and went back to her work. Every piece of technology she was creating had been designed specifically to counter Draconis Empire weapons and defenses. Humanity had been studying alien technology in secret for 20 years, ever since they first detected Empire transmissions from distant star systems. Above ground, Rita Kane was meeting with Supreme Commander Vexitar again. She sat across from him in what used to be the United Nations building, now converted to an alien command center. She had papers spread across the table, all showing human resource locations and population centers. "Ambassador Kane," Vexitar said, "your cooperation has been exemplary. The Empire appreciates species that understand their place in the galactic order." Rita smiled weakly. "We just want our people to survive, Commander. We know we cannot fight against your mighty empire." She handed him another set of documents. "These show the locations of our mining facilities and agricultural centers. We have also prepared detailed maps of our ocean floors and underground resources." Vexitar looked at the documents with satisfaction. The humans were being incredibly helpful. They were providing information that would have taken months to gather through scanning and exploration. But Rita was giving him fake maps and false information. The real mining facilities and resource centers were completely different from what the documents showed. Every piece of information was designed to keep the aliens away from humanity's actual secrets. Captain Roy Fletcher walked through the streets of London, wearing the uniform of a defeated Earth soldier. He looked tired and hopeless as he reported to the alien checkpoint for his daily assignment. The alien guards barely looked at him as they gave him orders to help load human equipment onto their transport ships. Roy had been playing this role for 3 days now. The aliens thought he was just another broken human soldier too defeated to cause any trouble. They had no idea that he was actually a special forces commander who had been trained for this exact situation. As he loaded boxes onto the alien ships, Roy was secretly studying their technology and security procedures. He memorized guard rotations, weapon positions, and weak points in their defenses. All of this information was being transmitted to hidden receivers through a communication implant that the aliens could not detect. At the same time, other human agents were working in alien facilities all over the world. They all appeared to be defeated civilians or soldiers, but each one was gathering intelligence and preparing for the next phase of the plan. Deep in the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Webb was monitoring all of these operations from his hidden command center. The screens around him showed the positions of every alien ship and unit on the planet. He also tracked the locations of the Shadow Fleet vessels hidden beneath the water. "Admiral," said one of his officers, "we are receiving reports from intelligence teams around the world. The aliens have no idea that we are monitoring their every move." Webb nodded. "What about their fleet in orbit?" "Still maintaining standard patrol patterns. They show no signs of suspicion. The alien commander believes Earth is completely under their control." Webb looked at the tactical displays showing alien ship positions. The Empire had brought exactly the force they always used for occupying primitive worlds. They were following their standard procedures perfectly, which meant they were walking right into the trap humanity had prepared. "Sir," another officer reported, "we are detecting unusual activity on the ocean floor. Something massive is moving beneath the Mariana Trench." Webb smiled for the first time in days. That would be the Pacific Fleet beginning Phase 2 preparations. Signal all other fleets to begin their emergent sequences. Around the world, hidden beneath the oceans, enormous structures began to move. These were the shipyards where humanity had built their secret fleet over the past 2 decades. The aliens above had no idea that an entire space navy was preparing to rise from the depths. The alien occupation forces continued their daily routines, completely unaware that everything was about to change. They had been so impressed by human cooperation that they had stopped taking serious security precautions. After all, what threat could a defeated species possibly pose? In the Atlantic Ocean, massive blast doors opened on the sea floor. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of her ship, the Night's Edge, as it began to rise from its hidden bay. Her vessel had been disguised as a research submarine for months, but now it was revealing its true nature as an advanced stealth destroyer. "Captain," said her weapons officer, "all systems are operational. Quantum torpedoes are loaded and ready." Lisa watched the depth readings as her ship rose toward the surface. "Maintain stealth field until we receive the emergence signal. We want to surprise our guests properly." Similar scenes were playing out in oceans around the world. Dozens of ships that had been hidden for years were preparing to reveal themselves. Each one was equipped with technology that surpassed anything in the Draconis Empire arsenal. Back in his command center, Admiral Webb received reports from all the hidden fleets. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The aliens still had no idea what was coming. "Admiral," his communications officer announced, "we are receiving a priority message from the surface. Rita Kane reports that the alien commander has agreed to attend tomorrow's final occupation ceremony." Webb looked at the master tactical display. Tomorrow, most of the alien leadership would be gathered in one location for the ceremony. It was the perfect opportunity to spring the trap. "Send the signal to all Shadow Fleet commanders," he ordered. "Tomorrow at dawn, we show these aliens what humanity really looks like when we stop pretending to be weak." The officer sent the coded message to hidden receivers around the world and throughout the solar system. In response, green lights began appearing on the tactical display as Shadow Fleet units confirmed they were ready for combat. The aliens sleeping in their ships above had no idea that beneath the ocean, humanity's true military might was preparing to emerge. The trap was nearly complete, and soon the galaxy would learn that Earth's surrender had been the greatest deception in galactic history. The sun was rising over the Pacific Ocean when the water began to move in ways that water should not move. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in his command center, watching the final moments before everything changed forever. On his screens, he could see alien ships patrolling peacefully above, completely unaware of what was rising from the depths beneath them. "All fleets report ready status, Admiral," his communications officer announced. Webb took a deep breath. For 20 years, humanity had lived a lie, pretending to be weak while building the most advanced space fleet in the galaxy. Today, that lie would end. "Execute Phase 2, he commanded. "Bring up the Shadow Fleet." Around the world, the ocean floor erupted. Massive structures that had been hidden in underwater trenches began rising toward the surface. Water cascaded off enormous ship hulls as humanity's secret fleet emerged for the first time into daylight. The Defiant Dawn was the first to break the surface. Admiral Webb's flagship was a mile-long vessel that dwarfed any ship the aliens had ever built. Its hull gleamed with advanced armor that could stop planet-killing weapons. Energy fields shimmered around it like trapped lightning. In orbit above Earth, the aliens on the patrol ship stared in shock at their sensors. The readings made no sense. Massive objects were appearing on their screens where nothing had existed moments before. Commander Vextar, one of the alien officers, called frantically into his communication device. "We are detecting enormous vessels emerging from the planet's oceans. They appear to be warships." Vextar was in his command room, preparing for the final occupation ceremony. He looked at the message with confusion and anger. Impossible. The humans surrendered completely. They have no warships. But even as he spoke, more and more reports came in from alien ships around the globe. The Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, all of them were producing massive human vessels that seemed to appear from nowhere. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the Night's Edge as her ship rose from the depths near the coast of Japan. Her vessel was smaller than the flagship, but it was equipped with the most advanced stealth technology humanity had ever developed. To alien sensors, her ship appeared to be in 3 different places at once. "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "enemy patrol ship bearing 270. They are scanning us but cannot get a solid lock." Lisa smiled coldly. The aliens were about to learn that their technology was not as advanced as they thought. "Target their engines and weapon systems. Fire when ready." The Night's Edge unleashed a barrage of quantum torpedoes that moved faster than light itself. The alien patrol ship had no time to react before its engines exploded, and its weapon systems went dark. The ship fell from the sky like a stone. "1 enemy ship neutralized," the tactical officer reported. "No damage to our vessel." Similar battles were happening all over the world as the Shadow Fleet engaged alien patrol ships. The aliens quickly discovered that their weapons could barely scratch the human ships, while human weapons tore through alien defenses like they were made of paper. Commander Jake Torres led a ground assault team that emerged from hidden bunkers beneath major cities. His soldiers wore powered armor that made them look like metal giants. Their weapons fired beams of pure energy that could cut through alien battle tanks. "All teams, execute ground phase operations," Torres commanded through his helmet communicator. Around the world, human soldiers who had been pretending to be defeated prisoners suddenly revealed their true nature. They attacked alien occupation forces with weapons and equipment that seemed impossible for a supposedly primitive species to possess. In London, Captain Roy Fletcher threw off his disguise as a broken soldier and activated a suit of advanced combat armor that had been hidden in his fake uniform. The alien guards who had been ordering him around for days suddenly found themselves facing a one-man army. "Surprise," Roy said, as he began systematically destroying their equipment with weapons they could not even understand. Supreme Commander Vextar watched the reports flooding in from around the planet with growing horror. Every alien unit was under attack by human forces that should not exist. His occupation army was being defeated by weapons that surpassed Draconis technology. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence showed that humans had primitive technology at best." His tactical officer was frantically working at his control station. "Sir, we are detecting massive energy signatures from the human ships. Their power sources appear to be more advanced than anything in our database." On the main screen, Images appeared of human vessels engaging alien ships in orbit around Earth. The human ships moved with impossible speed and agility, while their weapons struck with devastating precision. Dr. Elena Vasquez emerged from her hidden laboratory as fake walls and floors opened throughout the research facility. The primitive equipment the aliens had inspected was revealed to be holographic projections, hiding technology that could manipulate reality itself. "Activate all quantum resonance systems," she commanded her team of scientists. Around the world, hidden installations came online. These were weapons platforms that had been built in secret beneath major cities and disguised as ordinary buildings. They emerged from the ground and began targeting alien ships with beams of energy that could tear holes in space. Admiral Webb watched the battle unfold on his tactical displays. The Shadow Fleet was performing exactly as designed. Human ships were outfighting alien vessels that had conquered 17 star systems. "Admiral," his weapons officer reported, "the alien command ship is attempting to retreat to higher orbit." Webb looked at the massive alien flagship that had been hovering over Earth for days. "Not today. Target all main weapons on that vessel. It's time to send a message to the Draconis Empire." The Defiant Dawn and 5 other Shadow Fleet capital ships turned their weapons toward Vextar's command ship. The alien vessel was enormous and heavily armored, designed to fight other alien fleets, but it was not prepared for human weapons. Beams of coherent energy struck the alien ship from multiple directions. Its shields, which could stop planet-killing weapons, collapsed in seconds. The ship's hull began to crack and burn as human weapons tore through its defenses. "Impossible," Vextar whispered as alarms blared throughout his ship. "Our shields are rated to stop anything in the galaxy." His chief engineer looked at the damage reports with disbelief. "Sir, their weapons are operating on principles we do not understand. They are bypassing our shields entirely." The alien command ship tried to fight back, but its weapons could not penetrate the energy fields protecting the human vessels. The battle was completely one-sided. Captain Maria Santos piloted humanity's first quantum fighter in combat above the skies of Earth. Her ship existed in multiple dimensions at once, making it impossible for alien weapons to target effectively. She darted between alien vessels like a ghost, destroying them with precise strikes. "This is incredible," she said into her communicator as she watched another alien ship explode. "Their targeting systems cannot track us at all." The quantum fighters were humanity's most advanced single-pilot craft. They used technology that allowed them to phase in and out of normal space, making them effectively invincible against conventional weapons. Within hours, the battle for Earth was over. Every alien ship in the solar system had been destroyed or captured. The occupation forces on the ground had been defeated by human soldiers they had thought were helpless prisoners. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the wreckage of the alien fleet floating in space around Earth. The Shadow Fleet floated among the debris like victorious sharks. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we are receiving a transmission from deep space. It appears to be from the Draconis Empire's main fleet." Webb smiled grimly. The real battle was just beginning. The aliens they had defeated were just an occupation force. The Empire's true military might was still out there among the stars. "Put it through," he commanded. A holographic image appeared showing an alien commander even larger and more intimidating than Vextar. His eyes burned with rage and his voice rumbled with barely controlled fury. "I am War Marshal Thokvex of the Draconis 7th Battle Fleet," the alien announced. "You have made a grave error, humans. We are coming to finish what the occupation force started." The transmission ended and Webb looked at his tactical displays. Long-range sensors were already detecting a massive alien fleet jumping toward the solar system. It was 10 times larger than the force they had just defeated. "Well," Webb said to his officers, "it looks like we are about to find out if 20 years of preparation was enough. The real war was about to begin." War Marshal Thokvex was the most feared commander in the Draconis Empire. He had conquered more worlds than any other military leader in galactic history. His ships had burned the crystal cities of 12 different species. Now he was coming to Earth with the Empire's 7th Battle Fleet and he was very angry. "This is impossible," he growled as he studied reports of the battle for Earth. "How can a primitive species defeat an entire occupation force?" His tactical officer, a four-armed alien with purple skin, worked frantically at his control station. War Marshal, our analysis shows the human weapons operate on completely unknown principles. Their ships appear to have technology that surpasses our own. Thokvex slammed his massive fist on the command table. No species in the galaxy has technology that surpasses the Draconis Empire. These humans must have received help from another power. The War Marshal's fleet was approaching Earth's solar system with 600 warships. Each ship was a battle-tested veteran of countless conquests. The smallest vessels in his fleet were larger than the biggest ships humanity had revealed so far. "Sir," the communications officer announced, "we will reach the human system in 4 hours. Should we contact them and demand surrender?" Thokvex showed his fangs in what his species called a smile. "No. We will show them what happens to species that dare to resist the Empire. Destroy everything." On Earth, Admiral Webb was preparing for the biggest battle in human history. The Shadow Fleet had performed perfectly against the occupation force, but now they faced the Empire's true military might. "Status report," he commanded from the bridge of the Defiant Dawn. His tactical officer looked up from her displays. "All Shadow Fleet units are at combat positions. The defensive platforms throughout the solar system are online and ready. Ground-based quantum cannons are fully charged." Webb nodded grimly. Project Prometheus was humanity's ultimate defensive system. For 20 years, they had been building automated weapons platforms throughout the solar system and hiding them from alien sensors. Mars had been converted into a giant fortress. The asteroid belt contained thousands of hidden gun platforms. Even the moon was armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Captain Lisa Morgan's stealth destroyer, the Night's Edge, was positioned near Jupiter along with 12 other Shadow Fleet ships. Her mission was to use hit-and-run tactics to confuse the enemy and protect the larger human vessels. "Captain," her weapons officer reported, "long-range sensors are detecting the alien fleet. They are bigger than our intelligence estimated." Lisa looked at the tactical display with concern. The alien fleet was massive beyond anything they had prepared for. But humanity had advantages the aliens did not know about. "Signal the quantum fighter squadrons," she ordered. "Tell them to prepare for phase shift attack patterns." Commander Jake Torres was on the moon, overseeing the installation of humanity's newest weapons. These were reality manipulation cannons that could actually change the laws of physics in small areas of space. "How many shots do we get with these things?" he asked Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had come to oversee the final testing. "Each cannon can fire 3 times before the quantum core burns out," she explained. "But each shot can destroy an entire enemy squadron if targeted correctly." Torres looked through the transparent dome at Earth hanging in space below them. "Let's hope 3 shots per cannon is enough." The real Dr. Vasquez had been working non-stop for weeks to prepare humanity's most advanced weapons. The technology she had developed could do things that violated everything the aliens thought they knew about science. As the alien fleet approached, Admiral Webb activated communication channels to Shadow Fleet commanders throughout the solar system. Admiral Sarah Mitchell commanded the forces near Mars. Fleet Admiral Tom Harrison led the ships hidden in the asteroid belt. Captain David Reynolds controlled the defensive platforms near Venus. "All commanders," Webb announced. "This is it. Everything we have worked for comes down to the next few hours. The galaxy is watching to see if humanity deserves to be free." Responses came back from dozens of Shadow Fleet commanders. All of them reported their forces ready for battle. The trap was set, and this time it was designed to catch much bigger prey. War Marshal Thokvex's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. His sensors immediately began scanning for human ships and defensive positions. What he found surprised even his battle-hardened crew. "War Marshal," his science officer reported, "we are detecting massive energy signatures throughout this system. It appears the humans have fortified multiple planets and asteroid fields." Thokvex studied the tactical displays with growing interest. Impressive for a primitive species. But they have made a strategic error. They have spread their forces, too thin trying to defend everything. We will concentrate our attack and crush them piece by piece. The alien fleet began moving toward Earth in a massive formation. 600 ships arranged themselves into attack squadrons, each one capable of destroying a planet. But as they moved deeper into the solar system, hidden sensors began tracking their every move. The weapons platforms Admiral Webb had built, in secret, started targeting the alien vessels with systems the Empire had never encountered. The first attack came from the asteroid belt. What the aliens thought was empty space suddenly filled with weapons fire as hidden gun platforms opened up on the fleet's flanks. The alien ships found themselves under attack from enemies they could not see. "Report," Thokvex demanded as his ships began taking damage. "Sir, we are being attacked by stealth platforms hidden throughout the asteroid field. Our sensors cannot detect them until they fire," the War Marshal snarled in frustration. "Destroy the asteroids, all of them." But even as his ships began firing, on the asteroid belt more attacks came from different directions. Quantum fighters phased in and out of normal space, striking alien vessels and disappearing before return fire could hit them. Captain Maria Santos led a squadron of quantum fighters in a dancing battle through the alien formation. Her ships moved in impossible patterns, existing in multiple locations at once. "Target their command ships," she ordered her squadron. "Take out their coordination, and they cannot fight effectively as a fleet." The quantum fighters struck with surgical precision, destroying alien command vessels and communication arrays. The massive enemy fleet began to lose coordination as their commanders lost contact with each other. Admiral Mitchell's forces near Mars launched their own attack. The red planet had been converted into a fortress world, its surface covered with weapons that could reach across millions of miles of space. "Fire all planetary defense cannons," she commanded. Mars lit up like a star as hundreds of massive weapons fired simultaneously. Beams of energy that could crack moons struck the alien fleet from unexpected angles. War Marshal Thokvex watched his fleet taking massive casualties from enemies that seemed to be everywhere at once. His ships were designed to fight other conventional fleets, not invisible enemies that attacked from all directions. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. 137 vessels destroyed or disabled, sir. And we still have not reached the main battle zone." The War Marshal's confidence was beginning to crack. No species had ever inflicted such casualties on his fleet so quickly. But the humans were not finished. As the alien fleet approached Earth, Admiral Webb activated Project Prometheus in its entirety. The entire solar system became a weapons platform. Hidden installations on Venus opened fire. The moon revealed itself to be one giant gun battery. Even Earth itself began launching weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Dr. Vasquez's reality manipulation cannons fired for the first time in combat. The beams struck alien ships and simply made them cease to exist, as if they had never been built in the first place. "Impossible," Thokvex whispered, as he watched entire squadrons of his ships vanish, without a trace. "What kind of weapons are these?" His fleet was being systematically destroyed by technology that violated everything his species understood about warfare. The humans were not just more advanced than expected, they were operating on a completely different level of science. Admiral Webb watched the battle from his flagship as the Shadow Fleet closed in for the final engagement. The alien fleet was already broken and confused, but he wanted to make sure the message was clear. "All ships," he commanded, "execute final attack pattern. Show them what humanity looks like when we stop holding back." The Shadow Fleet revealed weapon systems they had kept hidden even during the first battle. Reality-warping cannons, dimension-shifting torpedoes, and energy beams that could cut through the fabric of space itself struck the remaining alien ships. War Marshal Thokvex's command ship shook under impacts from weapons he could not understand. His tactical displays showed impossible readings as human weapons bypassed every defense his empire had developed. "Sir," his communications officer called frantically, "we are receiving a transmission from the Draconis homeworld." A holographic image appeared showing the most powerful being in the galaxy, Emperor Dracmoris himself. The alien ruler's eyes burned with rage as he surveyed the destruction of his mighty fleet. "War Marshal," the Emperor said in a voice like grinding stone, "you have failed me. But do not worry. This attack on Earth was merely a test. Now we know what these humans are capable of." Thokvex looked confused. "A test, my Emperor?" "Yes. Morris replied with a terrible smile. We needed to see their true strength before we could plan properly. Now the real war begins. The transmission ended, and Thakvex realized with growing horror that his entire fleet had been sacrificed just to gather intelligence on human capabilities. Admiral Webb received the same transmission and understood immediately that the battle for Earth was just the beginning. The Empire had much greater forces, and now they knew exactly what humanity could do. The solar system was littered with the wreckage of alien ships, but the real war was about to begin across the entire galaxy. Emperor Morris sat on his throne made of crystallized starlight in the heart of the Draconis Empire's capital world. He was the most powerful being in the known galaxy, ruler of 1,000 worlds and commander of fleets that could destroy entire star systems. But today, for the first time in centuries, he was worried. "Show me the reports again," he commanded his advisors. The holographic displays around his throne room filled with images of the destroyed fleets near Earth. 2 entire battle groups had been annihilated by a species the Empire had considered primitive just days before. "My Emperor," said his chief military advisor, "our analysis shows that human technology is far beyond anything we have encountered. Their weapons operate on principles that our scientists cannot understand." Morris studied the tactical data with growing unease. The humans had not just defeated his forces, they had made it look easy. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds had been destroyed like toys. "What do we know about their other installations?" he asked. His intelligence chief, a thin alien with 6 eyes, stepped forward nervously. "My Emperor, we have detected similar energy signatures near 17 different star systems throughout the galaxy. It appears the humans have been building secret bases for decades." The Emperor's blood turned cold. If the humans had been hiding their true capabilities while building forces throughout Draconis space, then this was not just a local rebellion. This was a carefully planned war for control of the entire galaxy. Admiral Webb was coordinating with his deep space commanders from the bridge of the Defiant Dawn. The victory at Earth had been complete, but now the real challenge began. The Empire had thousands of worlds and millions of ships. Defeating them would require perfect timing and coordination. "Admiral Mitchell, report on the Mars offensive," he said into his communication system. The holographic image of Admiral Sarah Mitchell appeared on his screen. She was commanding a secret fleet hidden in the outer systems preparing to strike at Draconis supply lines. "Admiral Webb, all deep space units are in position. We have stealth fleets positioned near 12 major Empire worlds. When you give the signal, we can begin simultaneous attacks." Webb nodded with satisfaction. The Shadow Fleet was much larger than the aliens realized. While they had been focused on Earth, humanity had been building forces throughout the galaxy. "What about Admiral Harrison's forces?" Another holographic image appeared showing Fleet Admiral Tom Harrison from his flagship near the Empire's industrial worlds. "Sir, we have infiltrated their major shipyards and weapons factories. Our sabotage teams are ready to strike." Webb looked at the galactic map showing the positions of human forces. Red dots marked Empire worlds while green dots showed Shadow Fleet units. There were far more green dots than anyone outside of humanity's military command had ever imagined. Captain Lisa Morgan was leading a special mission deep in Empire space. Her ship, the Night's Edge, had used its advanced stealth systems to reach the Draconis capital world without being detected. "Captain," her tactical officer whispered, "we are in position above the Imperial Palace. All quantum torpedoes are targeted on the Emperor's throne room." Lisa studied the readings from her ship's sensors. The palace was heavily defended, but human weapons could penetrate any shield the Empire had built. "Hold position," she ordered. "Wait for the Admiral's signal." Meanwhile, on the Empire's homeworld, Rita Kane was completing the most dangerous mission of her career. She had infiltrated the Imperial Court using advanced disguise technology, pretending to be an alien diplomat from a distant world. "Ambassador Kane," said one of the Emperor's guards, "His Imperial Majesty will see you now." Rita walked through the massive doors into the Emperor's throne room, her heart beating fast, but her expression calm. Hidden beneath her alien disguise was a communication device that would coordinate the final attack on the Empire. Emperor Dracmoris looked down at the disguised human from his crystalline throne. Ambassador, you bring news from the outer systems? Yes. Your Imperial Majesty, Rita replied in perfect alien language. I have information about the human rebellion that you will find very interesting. The Emperor leaned forward with interest. Any intelligence about the humans was valuable now. But Rita was not there to give information. She was there to receive it. Her disguise contained sensors that were recording every detail of the Imperial Palace's defenses and the Emperor's personal security systems. Dr. Elena Vasquez was working in a hidden laboratory on one of humanity's secret base worlds, putting the finishing touches on their most devastating weapon. It was called the Reality Cascade Generator, and it could change the laws of physics across entire star systems. Doctor, her assistant said, the final calculations are complete. The device is ready for deployment. Elena looked at the weapon with mixed feelings. It had the power to end the war instantly, but using it would demonstrate to the galaxy that humanity possessed technology that could reshape reality itself. Signal Admiral Webb, she said. Tell him that Project Ultimatum is ready. All across the galaxy, Shadow Fleet units were receiving their final orders. The coordinated attack on the Draconis Empire would be the largest military operation in Nabia galactic history. Commander Jake Torres was leading ground forces on a secret mission to one of the Empire's fortress worlds. His soldiers wore advanced power armor that made them nearly invincible against alien weapons. All teams remember the mission, he said through his helmet communicator. We capture their command centers intact. We need their communication networks to coordinate the surrender of their remaining fleets. Captain Maria Santos was flying her quantum fighter through the defenses of a major Empire naval base. Her ship phased in and out of normal space, making her impossible to target as she planted quantum bombs on alien capital ships. This is incredible, she reported to her squadron. Their entire fleet is sitting here like targets. They have no idea we are even in the system. The Empire's forces were spread across 1,000 worlds, confident in their superiority and unprepared for simultaneous attacks everywhere at once. Admiral Webb looked at the chronometer on his command console. In 60 seconds, the Shadow Fleet would reveal itself in its entirety for the first time. The galaxy would learn that humanity had been preparing for this war much longer than anyone imagined. All units, he announced on the fleet-wide communication channel. This is Admiral Webb. Execute Operation Galactic Freedom. Show the galaxy what humanity stands for. Across 17 star systems, human forces struck simultaneously. Ships that had been hiding in deep space for years suddenly appeared above Empire worlds. Stealth bombers materialized inside heavily defended facilities. Ground forces emerged from hidden bases and captured alien command centers. The Draconis Empire's communication networks filled with panicked reports from commanders who could not understand what was happening. Human forces were attacking everywhere at once with weapons and tactics that made no sense. Emperor Dracomoris watched his empire crumble in real time as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. World after world was falling to human forces. That seemed to appear from nowhere. How is this possible, as he demanded? How long have they been planning this? His intelligence chief was frantically working at his control station. My Emperor, our analysis suggests they have been building these forces for at least 20 years. They have been preparing for galactic war while we thought they were a primitive species. The Emperor stood up from his throne in rage. Mobilize every ship we have. Call back all fleets from conquered worlds. We will crush these humans once and for all. Emperor Dracmoris had just enough time to realize that there was a human ship above his palace before the entire building collapsed around him. Rita Kane activated her communication device as the palace shook from the orbital bombardment. This is Ambassador Kane to all Shadow Fleet units. The Emperor is neutralized. Begin Phase 3. Phase 3 was the capture of the Empire's central command systems. Human forces that had infiltrated government buildings across the capital world suddenly revealed themselves and seized control of the military networks. Within hours, Admiral Webb was broadcasting a message to the entire Draconis Empire from the Emperor's own communication systems. People of the galaxy, he began, This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Terran Shadow Fleet. The Draconis Empire is finished. Rita Kane activated her communication device as the palace shook from the orbital bombardment. This is Ambassador Kane to all Shadow Fleet units. The Emperor is neutralized. Begin Phase 3. Phase 3 was the capture of the Empire's central command systems. Human forces that had infiltrated government buildings across the capital world suddenly revealed themselves and seized control of the military networks. Within hours, Admiral Webb was broadcasting a message to the entire Draconis Empire from the Emperor's own communication systems. "People of the galaxy," he began. "This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Terran Shadow Fleet. The Draconis Empire is finished. Their Emperor is dead and their fleets are destroyed. Humanity offers freedom to all worlds that were enslaved by the Empire." The message was broadcast on every frequency across 1,000 star systems. For the first time in centuries, the enslaved peoples of the galaxy heard words of hope. Dr. Vasquez's reality cascade generator was deployed near the Empire's core worlds, creating zones where Draconis weapons simply could not function. Their ships became helpless as the laws of physics around them changed. The war that the Empire thought would be a simple conquest became their complete defeat. Species that had been enslaved for generations rose up against their Draconis oppressors, supported by human weapons and technology. Within weeks, the mighty Draconis Empire had completely collapsed. Their 1,000-world dominion became 1,000 free worlds, each one choosing its own destiny. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of his flagship above the former imperial capital, looking out at a galaxy that was free for the first time in centuries. The Shadow Fleet had accomplished something that no one thought possible. They had liberated the entire galaxy. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we are receiving messages from governments throughout the galaxy. They want to establish peaceful relations with Earth." Webb nodded with satisfaction. "Signal all Shadow Fleet units. The war is over. Now we begin building a better galaxy." Rita Kane was appointed as Earth's first galactic ambassador, helping to establish a new system of government based on cooperation instead of conquest. The technology that humanity had developed in secret became the foundation for a golden age of peace and prosperity. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their advanced weapons or their tactical brilliance, but their ability to appear weak while growing strong, and their willingness to fight for the freedom of others. The Shadow Fleet became the guardians of galactic peace, ensuring that no empire would ever again enslave entire civilizations. And Earth, the world that was supposed to surrender without a fight, became the capital of a new age of galactic democracy. The aliens had expected Earth's surrender, but instead, they got humanity's greatest victory.